Yo, this is me, Mike, Ringmaster of the Imagination Circus, and I'm back after, what, a 6-7 month hiatus? For those who may have been waiting, I do apologize. I just kind of fell off when it came to making videos, but I am back, and I do want to talk about some stuff. As you can see, I've redecorated a bit. I happen to like the way it looks. What do you guys think? Anyway, here's my first topic. I'm going to do it in something of a full, kind of podcast format. I'm going to just kind of talk and ramble. In this case, we're going to be talking about RWBY, specifically RWBY Vol.7. As you may have noticed, my last video was also about RWBY, and I'm on kind of a RWBY kick because RWBY is kind of going on right now, although this episode will be coming out at least on the same day as the finale for Volume 7, at least for Rooster Teeth first members, but whatever. You know, the point is, I like RWBY. It's my second favorite series of all time, and frankly, well, yeah, I love it. I know it's got a lot of problems, it's got a lot of haters. People say our fandom is toxic. All fandoms are toxic to some degree, but it's not because there are more shitty people in a given fandom. It's because there are the shitty people tend to be the loudest, unfortunately. That's kind of just a given. You can't really do anything about that. But that's okay, because you know what? Like me, at least I like to think I'm a positive voice in the fandom, but that's just me. And it's not just because I tend to focus mostly on what I think is good about the show, because I know that the show isn't perfect. No show is perfect. Anyway, see what I mean? I'm already rambling. This is just how it is. Also, it feels good to be back. I'm not going to lie. I actually feel really good sitting here and talking to you guys again. It feels good. Anyway, I wanted to talk about RWBY Volume 7, and how I think it's the best volume we've ever had. Some people would disagree, or some people at least feel like it's just bottomed out at the end, which is how they feel about a lot of volumes. Frankly speaking, I feel like, with the exception of Volume 5, the show has just gotten better and better as it's gone along, and like it's risen and risen. Volume 6 was a real step up. Volume 7 has had the tightest writing, at least as far as I'm concerned, the show has ever had, and the tightest production value. I think it's fantastic. And so many things. I think one of the things I'd like to compliment about Volume 7 is the simple fact that a lot of the stuff that happened this volume, I didn't really see coming. Like, you know, specifically a lot of the stuff with Ironwood, for lack of a better way to put it. Let me explain. Ironwood as a character has always been kind of iffy with me.
Ask yourself this. Do you honestly believe your children can win a war?
He's cool. And I think he's a good guy deep down. But as pointed out by Goodwitch,
you're a good person, James. You've always done what you think is best for the people, even against strong protest. It's admirable. But it's high time you stopped talking about trust and started showing it.
He just has a problem trusting people. He claims he wants them to trust him. And granted, Ozpin made some mistakes.
The hearts of men are easily swayed.
But Ironwood cannot defer to other people. He insists on doing things his way. It's always his way or the highway.
General Ironwood's reports of these last few weeks have left us somewhat concerned.
This is the right move, Ozpin. I promise. I will keep our people safe. You have to trust me.
It's high time you stop talking about trust and started showing it.
You brought this on yourself.
And as anybody who knows what's going on in Volume 7 right now knows, that's kind of the way the volume is ending, with his coming up with this kind of crackpot scheme to save Atlas and the few people of Mantle they've already managed to evacuate, because he feels like there's just no way of beating Salem. And it's kind of an interesting reflection of how our main characters were in Volume 6. They had a moment where they just didn't know what they were going to do, where they felt hopeless and they felt like they just couldn't do anything. Specifically when they found out that Ozpin had been hiding things from them, and specifically that he hid that Salem was immortal, effectively, and could not be killed. Our characters in Volume 6, our main party, our main heroes, they fell into despair. They lost all hope. They didn't think they could do anything. The only one clinging to hope was RWBY, and I think part of her was panicking deep down. But because she is the hero, the truest of heroes, she held out hope. And it wasn't until after their encounter with the apathy that they really came to understand that what they needed to do to win. Because they can't give up. Because even if they can't outright defeat or kill Salem, they need to fight back. Because it's their job, and because just because things seem hopeless doesn't mean you give up. That's not how things work, okay? Otherwise, you might as well do like the apathy wants you to and just lay down and die. What is even the point at that point? What is even the point at that point? That didn't sound right. Point is, you get my point. But here, we've got Ironwood doing essentially the same thing. He's running away. Like, he's not even going to try and fight Salem. Sure, it seems hopeless. Sure, it seems impossible. But sometimes you have to at least try. Otherwise, again, what is the freaking point? There's a great quote from Captain America Civil War that sums it up.
This job. We try to save as many people as we can. Sometimes that doesn't mean everybody. But if we can't find a way to live with that, next time, maybe nobody gets saved.
Sometimes you can't save everybody. But if you're not going to even, like, that's basically what Cap's saying. If you don't even going to try, what is even the point? A lot of people, like, especially in certain circles or discussion forums on the internet concerning this volume and concerning Ironwood, seem to be siding with Ironwood, and they want consequences for Team RWBY. Well, this is the consequence. He decided that he couldn't trust them, even though, frankly speaking, the fact that he could just shut down their communication devices whenever he wanted after giving them these new scrolls, that's a little shady.
Ironwood's declaring martial law and abandoning Mantle! Salem is coming and he's going to use the staff to move Atlas! If we don't stop it, Mantle's going to be... What? No!
Like, Ironwood just doesn't know how to, like, he doesn't know how to work with other people. And I can kind of understand that. I don't consider myself much of a follower. I'm terrible at taking orders. I hate it. I just don't like listening to other people. But sometimes I at least try. I don't think James Ironwood, General of the Elysian military, the one who controls the whole freaking army, as well as headmaster of Atlas Academy, knows how to just listen to other people. I think that's his biggest flaw, and I think that's what's leading him astray here. He's doing something that he thinks is right, and from a pragmatic point of view, he is right from a pragmatic point of view. But the fact of the matter is, saving some people versus, and philosophers have been debating this kind of shit for centuries, but the point is, at least as far as I'm concerned, if you're not going to try and save everybody, why try and save anybody? Because, frankly speaking, then you're just putting more value on some life versus others. And that's not right. And it will never be right. It doesn't matter if you fail, because failure is a part of life. Some failures are more severe. Failing to save all these people? Okay, fine. That's terrible. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't at least try. And that's just the point I want to make. So for those of you, especially for those of you who seem to think that Ironwood is right in that case. Outside of that, there's a couple of other things that I would like to talk about. Specifically, some stuff from the most recent episode. Specifically the one... Okay, spoilers here. Spoilers for anybody who has not seen the most recent chapter of RWBY. Some people had some complaints about the most recent chapter, even though I freaking loved it. And again, this is not me saying that you're wrong for disliking it. This is me disagreeing with you. I will say, it's not perfect, but it's definitely not as bad as everybody is claiming. Okay, so what was the main focus of the chapters? Well, after last week, or this week, depending on when you get to watch the chapter, we have Team RWBY fighting against the Aesops, and one of the, in my opinion, the best fights of the entire series.
We're the best huntsmen in Atlas. You were. Then you trained us.
And frankly, I loved it. Like I said, I think it's really good. I think it's fantastic. It's a little interesting in the way they handled it, but I think they did it really well. Spoilers, like I said, Team RWBY wins. And if you wanted them to lose, that's fine. That's fine. I personally wanted to win from the beginning. I actually was afraid that the Aesops were going to win, but I was pleasantly surprised by both how epic the fight was and the fact that Team RWBY came out on top. Outside of that, what is there? Oh, right. The kind of weird 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 fight with Tyrion, Clover, and Crow. That one, again, I will say there are some problems there, but I can kind of just throw them to the wayside because they don't really amount to much outside of possible nitpicking or, again, if you think there's something wrong with how that went, that's on you, and I will say you are entitled to it, but I do think it was overall good, and the problems don't amount to much in the long run. Outside of that, and one thing, I will go to the end of the chapter first about this, because I want to talk about this first, because some people thought this was cringy. I kind of digged it. And I also think that it's kind of hilarious, the reactions people had to this. So essentially what I want to talk about in this case is a line that Penny says.
It gives me personal feelings.
Some people feel that it was kind of cringy. I can understand why. It does sound kind of bad out of context, but I think it makes sense in universe for a number of reasons. One, it's clearly a reference to the conversation that Penny and Winter had earlier on in the chapter.
The general is leaving Mantle to perish?
He's saving Remnant. We can't let the relics fall to Salem.
But all those people we just protected, they won't survive.
We don't have time to—
That doesn't bother you?
Along with a bunch of the other stuff, it kind of has to do with the arc Penny has been going throughout this chapter, from her conversation with RWBY.
Now that I'm the official protector of Mantle, I don't really have a team anymore. General Ironwood says I don't have time for friends.
Oh, how do you feel about that?
I feel like I wish I could do both the things I need to do and the things I want to do. Is that normal?
That's about as normal as it gets, Penny.
Her being framed for many, many unfortunate murders by Tyrion and Watts.
And the winner of the Atlas Council election.
And of course,
thought I was in control, but you heard me. I sounded like a petulant child.
I thought you sounded fine. You were just speaking from your heart.
And that is precisely the problem. I should have just stayed in line.
I guess you're right. I don't understand.
Winter and Penny have another conversation here, and that's another point in Penny's arc this volume, which is really also another great thing. It's kind of furthering her humanity, and how, ironically, despite her being a machine, at least on the surface, she's actually more human than a lot of the characters in Atlas, which, is both amazing and kind of sad when you think about it. But regardless, like Penny says this line,
it gives me personal feelings.
And a lot of people thought it was ridiculous, but I think it makes sense for her. For one thing, like I said, it's a reference to the last conversation she had with Winter earlier in this chapter. But it's also just kind of a Penny thing to say. We all think of Penny as a really cool character, and she is. She's fantastic, probably one of the strongest combatants in the entire series. Combatants? That's a hard word to say, especially fast. But she is one of the coolest combatants. She's one of the coolest characters. She's adorable, and she's just so kind. She's genuinely, if any character in any series has ever been able to be called a cinnamon roll, it's this girl. However, some people took umbrage with this line, but when you get right down to it, Penny is essentially a child in a young woman's body. Anybody who might need to ruminate on that, I'll let you get to that. Meanwhile, I'll continue with those who don't need to slowly kind of confront their feelings for a fictional robot who I said, again, is a child in a young woman's body. But regardless, Penny is still in a very developmental stage of her life in that sense. She's still kind of figuring out who she is. She has a personality, but she is not yet fully formed to that personality because she is still learning about the nuances of human behavior, emotions, responsibility, all of these things which have kind of just been thrust upon her, as is often the case with machine characters like her, such as, let's say, Data from Star Trek The Next Generation. One of my favorite sci-fi shows. I'm not a Trekkie, but I do really like Star Trek The Next Generation, and Data is my favorite character. Although, from what I've gathered, he's kind of a lot of people's favorite character, but, well, I mean, yeah. Anyway, because of that, I feel like this line from Penny makes a whole lot of sense with her character. Yeah, it's not a great line, but I think that's almost the point. It kind of reflects how she's still figuring this stuff out. So it's not like they weren't trying, I don't think they were trying to actually make that sound cool, because I don't really think Rooster Teeth goes out of their way to make stuff sound cool. A lot of the lines that a lot of us have focused on, or a lot of the things we focused on about a show, like RWBY, or any show for that matter, or any series for that matter, tends to be by accident. For instance, a lot of people cling to the fact that, well, blue milk from Star Wars, just a very innocuous thing that, but from the moment it appeared on screen, people were weirdly fascinated by it, which, you know what, I'm not even going to touch on that. The point is, people are kind of obsessed with it. Same way with just Darth Vader. Despite all of the many, many facets that made up his character, I don't think George Lucas or anybody really realized how much many people, including myself, were going to become obsessed with his character. Outside of that, when it comes to RWBY, let's use an example of, say, something like this.
It's also a gun.
Oh. And yeah, because why not? It's like, it's really so unimportant, but it's become a staple of this franchise, because when people latch onto something, the company that made it generally knows they can do stuff with it, whether it's to make money or to, you know, just kind of fulfill that need. Like, it's kind of like how in RWBY Chibi, they started with, like, one of their longest running jokes was that, now that's the katana, but they even made a joke about the joke itself getting tired because they used it so often. Because, yeah, they kind of did. And that's how things work. So it's like, you know, they're not trying to make this line sound cool. It's just kind of, I kind of like it because it is so perfect coming out of Penny's mouth because it's so her more than anything else. So I'm okay with it. And that's an innocuous bit from this episode. Let's talk about the stuff that people actually had a problem with. You know, because, like, I will say the complaints for this line were pretty minor by comparison, but let's focus on the fights, which were the majority of this episode and the decisions. Okay, so let's start with the Team RWBY versus Aesop's fight. So, a lot of people feel like Team RWBY should have lost. I was actually afraid the Aesops were going to win going in, because, you know, not because I wanted them to win or because I was afraid for Team RWBY, but because I genuinely wanted to see Team RWBY succeed, but I felt like the expected outcome was the Aesops winning, and I was pleasantly surprised that that wasn't the case. And I know a lot of people think that Team RWBY should have lost, but I feel like this really makes sense. Like, a lot of people feel like just because Team RWBY just got their licenses, they're suddenly, like, they shouldn't be qualified for a fight like this. But it's not like they won because they were just that badass. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. Because fights are a little bit more nuanced than that. Like, you know, fights are generally not that, like, one-sided unless the person in question understands how you fight well enough and fight well enough on their own to take you out. Prime example being the fight from the train in Volume 2 between Neo and Yang. Because Yang was utterly decimated, but that makes sense under those circumstances. This fight here in this volume also makes sense under the circumstances that we are presented with. Let's focus on the individual bits. We've got RWBY versus Harriet. RWBY's fight is probably the most dead-even fight in the entire scene, because RWBY has never been great when it comes to fighting people. Even with her scythe, which is her primary mode of combat, she has never been great, because her primary interest and her primary skill set has always been fighting the Grimm, in which she excels. But when it comes to fighting people, she's a great tactician, but applying that during an active fight is not always easy. So what does she do? Well, she uses her newly found ability with her semblance, an ability she only discovered thanks to Harriet in the first place, to escape a given moment, because she is not fast enough to out and out beat Harriet, nor skilled enough in combat to do so. But she is smart enough to escape and use this new ability to do so, and then wait for an opening to take Harriet out. And that is the primary thing RWBY is trying to do here. And it's why I was slightly unsatisfied that Weiss took out Harriet instead, but she was only able to do that because RWBY had been holding her off that long. So I was kind of okay with it, and it was a nice save coming from Weiss. So pat on the back to both RWBY and Weiss in that case. Speaking of Weiss, let's move on to her fight. She fights Marrow. Her winning against Marrow is probably the easiest to explain, though I want to give Weiss some serious credit. In this case, she played it smart. She used what she is good at, and she took down Marrow. Marrow, who himself hesitated from the beginning of the fight, and I will indicate that Team RWBY would have been captured if Marrow had used his semblance. He didn't, and I'm very happy about that for a number of reasons. One, because Marrow is my second favorite, member of the Aesops. Marrow is like a really good character, and he's very likable. He's kind of, especially, you feel kind of bad for him because his teammates kind of treat him kind of badly, and I don't know if it's a kind of subconscious, ingrained racism, or if it's just because he's that cocky. I honestly don't know, but regardless, I really like Marrow, and so him hesitating when it comes to fighting Team RWBY shows how good of a character he really is, because he's the most conflicted about it. But he does give it his best, at least under these circumstances, and he doesn't do terribly. He does hold Weiss off, but it is here that we find out the internal weakness of Marrow's semblance, and that is his ability to apparently only affect a character in his direct line of sight, or a thing in his direct line of sight, as it were. And again, I've seen some people give different, explanations for this, but I think this makes the most sense. He is looking straight on at Weiss, who's attacking him from a distance. He freezes her. But then the freaking Armagigas comes out with the big old sword about to take his butt out, and what does he do? He turns and he uses it on him. But that gives Weiss the opening to take him out, take out his aura, knock him unconscious, and capture him. And that's how it is. She played it smart, and I will give her great credit, because what she ends up doing, she creates a sheet of ice, and at first, I just thought she was using it to try and slip up old Marrow, but what she does is, she gets up, she lights that place up, steam erupts, and it gives her the opportunity to summon the Armagigas. And I think this is her learning for what happened the last time she tried to summon the Armagigas, specifically against Vernal, where her aura was broken, and then Cinder took advantage of that, and yeah, I think you get my point. The fact of the matter is that, she played it smart and she won for that reason. Then we have the fight between Vine and Elm against Bumblebee, essentially. And it's, again, a very good fight. It's probably the one where I can give less of a specific reason why they won, outside of just out-and-out teamwork. And that's another thing that's kind of been focusing on. Outside of just the relationship of Blake and Yang kind of coming together this volume, and as they were kind of rocky last volume and slowly came together because of their winning and subsequent killing of Adam, because they're now back on that solid ground. Granted, it's solid ground because they murdered somebody together. Well, not murdered. They were defending themselves, and his ass had it coming. So you know what? It's not murder. It's self-defense. Point is that the point is that they're on solid ground, and they've been showcasing their teamwork. Hell, Marrow even commented on that.
Hey, have you two ever thought about branching out a little? You always pair up, but I don't know if your styles really good stuff. Yeah, keep it up.
And we see it, and they are solid. And so their teamwork is perfect, whereas Vine and Elm, as close as they seem to be, don't seem to have that. And that's kind of the biggest problem with the Aesop's fighting against Team RWBY to begin with.
Marrow, cut the crap, will you?
I'm trying to arrest her, not kill her, Hair. You're being excessive.
It's not excessive if it's necessary.
Is the simple fact that they don't have what it takes to fight as a team. Like, again, Harriet mentioned earlier in the volume, they just don't consider each other friends. And that's kind of a big problem. People say it's the power of friendship that let RWBY win. No, it's because they know each other, can work well together, able to back each other up. And again, yeah, trying to put together a well-oiled team based purely on empirical data, which is essentially what Ironwood did with the Aesops, that's not really a good way of building teamwork specifically, especially for a bunch of people who apparently can't even consider each other friends. It's just never going to work, and that's why they failed here, because they just weren't in sync. Whereas for the Bumblebee versus Elm and Vine fight, they were able to properly use their abilities slowly but surely, kind of waiting for the right opportunity. Their teamwork was essentially flawless. Especially, and in both of their cases, they properly used their semblances. They didn't waste them. They didn't waste them and give their opponents a chance to get used to them. They waited for the opportune moment to take them out. In, like, Blake's case, she attached some of Yang's bomb, and that's another great example of teamwork, but they used Yang's bombs attached to one of Blake's clones and took out Vine, and it was spectacular. And even more spectacular was when they kicked Elm's ass. And I'm sorry, I loved Elm. I really like her character, but she shouldn't have fought our girls to begin with, so this is on her. And kind of Ironwood, but mostly Elm herself. Anyway, what does Yang do? She built up her semblance that entire fight, and when she finally decides to use it, she doesn't attack Elm herself. She attacks the floor, not only launching Elm up into the air, but creating a scenario in which she can't properly use her semblance. And thus, they go in for the kill, and it was beautiful, beautiful. And so basically, that well-oiled teamwork that we got from Yang and Blake is why they won, why they deserved to win. This whole thing is why the whole of Team RWBY deserved to win. And frankly speaking, I don't know what people are up in arms about. It's like, because they got hit multiple times. Okay, Weiss didn't get hit, at least not that I can recall. But Blake and Yang got hit multiple times during this fight. It wasn't just a straight-up brawl. They used tactics, their own specific skills and semblances, and everything they'd learned along their journeys to beat their opponents. And that's why.
You think you're going to stop us? We're the best huntsmen in Atlas.
You were. Then you trained us.
Yeah, because, frankly, that kind of added to it. They've been fighting alongside the Aesops this whole time. They know how they fight, and that gives them another distinct advantage. They know their opponents really well, in fact. Hell, outside of just not working together, the other real reason that, like, the Aesops got their butts kicked was because they never took Team RWBY seriously, kind of like the fandom does, apparently. Because, frankly, not taking your opponent seriously might be the worst thing you can do in an actual fight. I'm not joking. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. If you underestimate your opponent, you will get your ass kicked. Like, that's fighting 101, I have to say. Regardless of that fact, I think these fights and the fights between these two teams as a whole were just gorgeous and brilliant, well written, and it was all good. It was just all really freaking good. Outside of this factor, what else was there? Oh, right, of course, the Crow Tyrion fight. I suppose with Clover as well. I suppose I should bring out Robin, but she gets knocked unconscious pretty quickly. All right, so look, I get why some people have a problem with this. I have certain problems with it as well. But, and this is the thing I kind of have to point out, nothing about it is really out of character. Nothing out of it is bad writing. It is, however, decisions that I personally don't agree with, but from a character writing standpoint, it all makes sense for these individuals. Robin is hot-headed. What she did, while not really smart, is understandable for both her character and her situation. Crow, everything he did was kind of a I have no other choice kind of situation, so I can't fault him there. Clover was just being an idiot. He is the one I have the biggest problem with in that case, but I have to say, he felt what he did what he needed to do. He takes Ironwood so seriously, and he believes in the man so much that he was willing to do what he did. And while I have to say it was the wrong decision in the end for a number of reasons, not just for how it ended, but everything leading up to it, but also because, frankly speaking, I understand. When you're that loyal to someone and you believe in them that much, you're going to follow their orders. Maybe he could have teamed up with Crow, but yeah. And I will say, yes, Crow teaming up with Tyrion, okay, yeah, I agree, that's dumb, but he didn't really team up with him. What he did was, he fought alongside him, not necessarily the same thing, kind of an alliance of opportunity, because he felt the need to, fight Clover, because, again, he wanted to take out Tyrion, which was the thing that him and Clover should have done from the beginning once Tyrion entered the fray. But the fact of the matter is, Clover would not let Crow do his job. Come on, man. I am genuinely sad he's gone. Again, spoilers. I am sad he's gone. But come on, man. Come on. I mean, what the hell? What the hell? Honestly, if Clover had just given them a moment so that they could, again, take out Tyrion together, then they could have gone back to fighting. Or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if I even care that much about that point. What I will say is that he did something stupid, and there's no quote justifying it, but I think this is, again, trying to show that the mentality of the Aesops is kind of screwed up. And it's always been this way, from their faulty belief that you can't be friends with people or with your coworkers or with your team, to the simple fact that they believe in following orders because they're soldiers. That's what's ingrained in them. I will point out that there is a law about following orders from a superior officer when they appear to be unjust or unlawful. I would say what Ironwood is doing right now, that definitely counts. Although, maybe, and I'm assuming this, Atlas probably doesn't have that law, because they probably would never have considered it. The point I am trying to make is that there were mistakes made, but in the end, I think it made sense. Was I happy with it? No. Did I think it looked good? Yes. Was I very sad that Clover died? Yes, because he was my favorite of the Aesops. And he was my favorite for a simple reason. He was the nicest member of the Aesops. He made a very huge mistake in this case, but I think he was a genuinely nice guy. He wasn't pretending or anything. He was genuinely that nice. Was he full of himself and too cocky, and that's probably what got him killed? Outside of his loyalty to Ironwood? Yes. Yes, it is. And that's on him. But the fact of the matter is, he was a good guy, just trying to do what he felt was the right thing, just trying to follow orders, and it got him killed. And I've never felt so bad for Crow. But let's talk about Volume 7 as a whole. I love it. I think it's hilarious. I am genuinely looking forward to the finale, although a lot of people have no idea what's going to happen in the finale. I got news for you. I have no idea. Some people have put out theories. I got no theories about what's going to happen, at least at the end of this volume. I had ideas going into this volume, but they've completely subverted my expectations in a very good way. They've showcased what they can do now under these perfect circumstances for what I think is the best volume this show has ever had. But frankly, I don't know what's going to happen in the finale. And I think that's kind of a good thing, because I like being surprised a lot of the time. Like I was pleasantly surprised by Team RWBY beating the Aesops. So I am actually really excited for where the finale is going to go. I haven't been this absolutely baffled about how things were going to go since, frankly, God, it's been maybe all the way back to Volume 3. Which is a good thing, because that was one of the tightest volumes we've had as well. But also because, God, I really, really don't want things to go that badly. And God, I'm so afraid certain characters are going to die. Okay, to be honest with you, and I'm going to be really honest with you, like I said, I don't know how it's going to end, but I know this. There are certain characters I don't want to die. Okay, Winter, Ironwood, I'm sorry, guys. I'm kind of okay with you dying. Whatever villains have to die makes sense. They're villains. They are meant to die or go to prison. That's just how it is. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. But Penny can die too, because we have at least one more time where she can get revised. And again, another really tight writing thing, by the way they explained her coming back is primarily not just because of her memory core, but because of her father's giving her part of his aura. That's awesome, and it might kill him if we have to do it again, so that worries me, because Pietro, I don't want him to die, but if he has to die saving Penny, I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm not, but I'm also am. If I don't know, okay? This is how I feel! It's really freaking heart-wrenching and stuff. Outside of that, the characters, Team RWBY kind of has, like, I hate to use this term because people have kind of bastardized it and kind of, they've done terrible things using this word because frankly, they've overused and kind of ruined it. But plot armor. Team RWBY kind of has plot armor. Not just because they're the main characters, but primarily because, frankly, this show couldn't be called RWBY if one of them were to up and die. The characters that I'm like, Oscar also I don't think is going to die either. I think he has a degree of plot armor because I don't think they would do the whole Oz is going to reincarnate again thing. Again, I don't think they would do that a second time in this show. Or if they did, they would save it for the end and not for, well, we're closer to the end than we've ever been, but we're still not there yet, and I think we've still got a ways to go. As for the only characters I'm genuinely afraid of dying is Juniper, any of the remaining members of Team Juniper. Like, I like Pyrrha, devastated, like her loss, she was never my favorite character, but her dying genuinely shocked me, and I am sad to see her go. But frankly, I've had a lot more time to bond to Nora, Ren, and Jean, and I don't want to see any of them die. I really don't. I am most afraid for Jean, even though I think he is the least likely of the three to die, because he's Jean, and he's the primary male protagonist of this show. So I don't think he's gonna die. However, then there's but still, there's always that chance, because nobody thought that Pyrrha, okay fine, some people thought that Pyrrha was gonna die, but most people did not think Pyrrha was gonna die. Me included, I definitely didn't think she was gonna die. But outside of Jean, I'm afraid for Nora and Ren. I'm gonna be honest, if they killed only one of them, I don't want them to kill either of them, but if they killed one path of Renora, the Renora ship, again, it's not so much about the ship itself, it's about how it would affect the surviving character. Because I don't think Nora or Ren would be able to handle if the other died. I don't think they'd be able to handle it if Jean died, but I don't think they'd be able to handle it if the other one died. It would not be good. And frankly, I don't want to go through that kind of emotional turmoil on their behalf. I might have to, but I seriously hope it. But I'm really hoping, look, and some people don't think Cinder's gonna die. Honestly, that's kind of up in the air as far as I'm concerned. I know most people hate her guts. I hate her guts because she's a bitch. Not because she's not the greatest character, but just because she's sickening evil to the point of I hate her guts. She's on a very short list of characters I genuinely dislike. But frankly speaking, I wouldn't be super satisfied if she was killed this way. It's why I was okay that we finally got Adam's death last volume, because I think it made sense for him to finally go against both Yang and Blake and have them be the ones to kill him. So I also kind of feel like RWBY and Jean need to be the ones to kill Cinder. Why? Because they kind of had the greatest investment in killing Cinder. For RWBY, because she actually witnessed Pyrrha's death, and of course that's also going to affect her at an emotional level, but she actually witnessed it and was the only one to witness it. But outside of that fact, there's also the fact that Cinder is gunning for her specifically. As with Jean, well, he's the most emotionally devastated by that death, and it has held heavy onto him for a long time, and so he has a personal grudge against Cinder. And that's why I think those two should be the ones to finish her off. But that's kind of my thoughts on the whole thing. Regardless, this has been, in my opinion, one of the best volumes we've had for the longest time. As for the character designs, again, I pretty much liked everybody's from the start. Some people have been questioning I've heard some people question about Weiss having that much hair. She's always had that much hair. She put it up in a very unique style, and that's what's kept it away, but she's always had that much hair. It's just that she's doing it where it makes it look like she has more hair, but really it's just the style. Regardless, That's not super important. Some people dislike Blake's hair. I must admit, when I went into this, I disliked Jean's hair more. And, but as the volume has gone on and I've seen him with it more and I've seen him moving with it, I've actually come to appreciate it. And you know what? It's not that bad. It's really not that bad. I actually think it looks good on him. And good on him for getting all of that female attention. Blake's hair, again, I know I'm specifically talking about the hair, but frankly speaking, I think all of the outfits are fine, if not outright good. Regardless, when it comes to Blake's hair, like, I feel like I actually tend to like girls with short hair. I think they tend to look really good. I think not enough girls try out that style and see if it actually works for them. It doesn't always, but I think that it looks good on a surprisingly large number of females out there. But regardless, I think Blake actually does mostly look good with his hair. I just really hate her bangs. But I always hate that kind of style of bangs. I hate when it happens to me. I hate when it happens to other people mostly. Some people can pull it off, but in my opinion, it's just not a good look overall. So I feel like if Blake just cut her bangs a little bit, do it like, her hair is actually way closer to her mom's style, so maybe if she did it, like, just get rid of the bangs. I hate it. I hate it so much. But regardless, that's kind of a minor issue. So anyways, frankly speaking, do I have anything else? Oh, Crow. I think I forgot to talk about Crow. Did I? I don't know if I already talked about this. Okay, I am afraid for what Crow is going to do. I don't want him to start drinking again, but if he did, it's totally understandable, it's totally believable if he did start talking about, started drinking again, because under the circumstances, I'd probably drink too. So in his case, like, if he feels the need to start drinking, that's fine. It's kind of understandable. However, I'm not 100% sure he will. He might not, because he seems to be more focused on vengeance right now. He is going to go after General Ironwood with a vengeance, literally, because he seems to blame him for Clover's death. And I'm not again, yeah, it was Tyrion who killed him with Crow's own weapon. And I think Crow definitely blames himself. He absolutely blames Tyrion. You better believe he's going to go after him eventually. Again, he nearly killed him as well, so now he's got a really, really strong grudge against that guy. But he seems, at least based on the way the chapter ended, he seems really intent on going after James. And I have a feeling he's going to tear him a new one. I don't know how that fight would go, but it would be awesome because it's essentially a Tin Man versus Scarecrow fight. Though I will say, considering that Ironwood's one flesh arm is burnt and the skin's off, I don't think it's broken, but the skin appears to have come completely off. So I don't know how this is going to go. Like I said already, I don't know how Volume 7 is going to end, but I am hyped, I am excited, I am scared, I am, nervous, and I'm also kind of annoyed because it means I'm going to have to wait almost another year once again for Volume 8. But you know what? It's worth it because I think this was the best volume of RWBY so far, if not the best ever, outright in all the best ways. And so I cannot wait for Volume 8, and I can't wait for the finale. And yeah, I think I covered everything there. Yeah, so anyway, this is Mike, Ringmaster of the Imagination Circus. I think I covered all my bases. I talked about what I want to talk about. So yeah, if you feel so inclined, please visit me sometime in the future. If you, again, feel so inclined. And yeah, have a good day, or good night, or whenever you're watching this. Bye.
Here!
No!